The moment I pulled my brand new Rolls-Royce Ghost into the driveway of my recently purchased home, a strange sense of unease washed over me. It was supposed to be a day of triumph, a symbol of years of hard work and success finally paying off. But as I hadn't even switched off the engine, I caught movement in my rearview mirror. There she was. A woman, probably in her late 40s or early 50s, marched purposefully across the cul-de-sac. Her platinum blonde bob was impeccably styled, and oversized designer sunglasses covered her eyes, shielding her from the sun but not from the sharp intensity in her gaze. She wore a pastel cardigan that fluttered behind her like a cape, and with every determined stride, her expression grew more severe, more accusatory. She reached my car in seconds, stopping just before the driver's door with a kind of urgency that suggested she'd been rehearsing this confrontation in her mind all morning. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice cutting sharply through the quiet neighborhood. I could hear her clearly even with the windows up. "Who are you, and what are you doing with that vehicle?" I opened the door calmly, key still in hand. "Hi, I'm Jason. Just moved in today, 1542, Oakwood Drive." She scanned me up and down, her eyes narrowing, clearly unimpressed by my casual jeans and button-up shirt. Nothing about me screamed Rolls-Royce owner, apparently. "That's impossible," she said, arms folding tightly across her chest. "The Millers just sold that house to a young professional? You're barely out of college." "Actually, I'm 21, I replied with a small smile. "And yes, I bought the Miller place last month. The paperwork was finalized just last week." Her eyes gleamed with suspicion as she began pacing around the car, her heels clicking sharply on the pavement. "No one your age can afford a car like this," she said flatly. "Unless it's stolen. I'm calling the police. We don't tolerate criminals here in Oakwood Estates." Before I could say a word, she whipped out her phone with a dramatic flourish and began dialing 911, her gaze locked on me like a hawk watching its prey. I sighed and leaned casually against the car's doorframe, waiting for whatever would come next. This wasn't how I'd imagined my first day in my new home going, but I was no stranger to skepticism. As the CEO of a tech startup I'd built from the ground up, recently acquired for 8 figures, I'd grown used to people doubting me, especially because of my age. "Yes, officer," she was saying into her phone now, her voice loud enough to carry down the cul-de-sac. "There's a suspicious young man with a Rolls-Royce that obviously doesn't belong to him. I believe we're looking at a grand theft auto situation at 1542, Oakwood Drive. Please send help immediately before he can escape." I pulled out my own phone and quickly texted my assistant, "Delays. Unexpected welcome committee. Will update." Karen, the self-appointed neighborhood watchdog, ended the call with a triumphant smile. "The police will be here any minute," she warned. "I suggest you don't try to leave." "I'm not going anywhere," I said evenly. "This is my house and my car. But I don't believe I caught your name." With unmistakable pride, she puffed up her chest. "Karen Wellington, president of the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. 6 consecutive terms." Of course her name was Karen. The universe had a sense of humor. "Well, Karen," I said, reaching for my wallet, "I assure you I am the legal owner of both this home and this vehicle." I pulled out my driver's license and the car's registration, holding them up clearly. "If you'd like, you can check the county records or the vehicle database. I'm happy to prove everything's legitimate." She took the documents hesitantly, still eyeing me like I might vanish into thin air. But as she scanned the papers, a flicker of uncertainty replaced her earlier certainty. Before the police arrived, I decided to break the ice, sensing her hostility was more about protecting her neighborhood than suspicion of me personally. "So, how long have you lived here, Karen?" "Almost 15 years, she replied, her tone softening slightly. "I take pride in this community." "Me too," I said, nodding. "That's why I wanted to move here. It's peaceful, beautiful, exactly what I've been working toward." She looked away briefly, then back. "Well, Jason, welcome to Oakwood Estates. Just, don't expect us to roll out the red carpet for every newcomer." I smiled, the tension easing. Fair enough. The sound of sirens in the distance caught both our attention. Karen's face tightened again, but I was ready. The paperwork was in order, my story solid. And this was only the beginning of proving that I belonged here. Show her my identification, I thought, feeling the tension coil tighter around me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my driver's license. Would you like to see the deed to the house as well? I asked, my voice steady but firm. I have digital copies of everything. Karen waved my license away dismissively without even glancing at it. I've seen plenty of fake IDs in my time, she said sharply, crossing her arms. The Oakwood HOA has a strict vetting process for new residents, and I don't recall approving anyone who looks like you. Her words hit like a slap. By looks like you? I repeated silently, feeling a sinking pit in my stomach. She wasn't just questioning my age. Karen's eyes were narrowing at my brown skin with the same suspicious glare she'd just given my car. I took a deep breath and reminded myself, her bias is her problem, not mine. The housing association doesn't approve individual buyers, Karen, I explained calmly, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. That's not how real estate transactions work. The previous owners accepted my offer, my financing cleared, and the sale legally closed. I am now a resident of Oakwood Estates, whether the HOA president personally approved me or not. Karen's face flushed a deep, alarming shade of red, and her voice dropped an octave, laced with barely concealed anger. We'll see about that. Her eyes shifted to my car again, narrowing. And we'll certainly see about that vehicle, she added. Number 21-year-old has that kind of money unless something illegal is happening. Did you hack someone's bank account? Is this some kind of money laundering scheme? Karen began pacing around my car, snapping photos with her phone from every possible angle, license plate included. A few neighbors had started to come outside, drawn by the unfolding drama, their faces curious and uncertain. Karen seemed to feed off the growing audience, her voice rising. I've seen this kind of scam before. Young people show up with luxury items they couldn't possibly afford legitimately, and next thing you know, we have drug deals in our quiet community. Not on my watch. I opened the glove compartment, pulling out the vehicle registration and insurance documents. Karen, I'm a tech entrepreneur. My company was acquired just last year. I can show you the registration. This car is mine, legally purchased from Beverly Hills Auto Gallery 3 months ago. She squinted at the papers I handed over but stubbornly refused to take them. Oh please, she scoffed. Anyone can forge documents these days. My nephew works in cybersecurity. He warns me about sophisticated criminals all the time. Just then, 2 police cruisers rolled slowly into the cul-de-sac. Karen's expression shifted instantly, from hostility to smug satisfaction. She straightened her cardigan, adopting a damsel in distress pose as the officers approached. Officers, thank goodness you're here, she exclaimed, hurrying over. I caught this young man red-handed with a stolen luxury vehicle. He's trying to claim he lives here, but I'm the HOA president, I know all legitimate residents. The officers, one older with a salt and pepper mustache, the other younger and clean-shaven, approached cautiously. The older officer addressed me first, his voice steady but curious. Sir, we received a call about a suspicious vehicle in the neighborhood. Can you explain what's going on here? I nodded, holding out my registration papers and house deed. Absolutely. I'm the new owner of the house at 23 Oakwood Lane. This car is registered to me. The younger officer glanced at Karen, then back at me, his eyes narrowing slightly but remaining neutral. Ma'am, he said, addressing Karen, we'll need to verify all claims. In the meantime, please step back. Karen hesitated for a split second, then muttered. Fine, but I'm watching. As the officers began their investigation, I realized this was only the beginning of a fight I hadn't expected when I moved into Oakwood Estates. Scene, outside a newly purchased house on a quiet suburban street. Jason Chen stands next to a sleek, expensive car as 2 police officers approach. Officer 1, younger. Good afternoon, sir. We received a call about a possible stolen vehicle. Can I see your driver's license and registration, please? Jason. Of course, officer. He calmly hands over the documents he'd already prepared. My name is Jason Chen. I just closed on this house today and was moving in when this lady accused me of stealing my own car. Officer 2, older, nods and starts examining the paperwork carefully while the younger officer runs Jason's info through their system. Karen, a woman in her late 40s, standing nearby, hovers aggressively. Interrupting, he's obviously using fake identification. I've been the president of this HOA for 6 years, and I personally review all new homeowner applications. This young man would never qualify for our community. And that car? That's a $300,000 vehicle. He's barely old enough to drink. Officer 2. Raising an eyebrow but staying professional, ma'am, please step back and allow us to do our job. Officer 1. Quietly to partner, but Jason can overhear, everything checks out. Vehicle is registered to him, no flags on his record. Insurance is current. The deed transfer for the house was recorded with the county last month. Karen. Voice rising, desperation creeping in, that's impossible. Check again. He must have hacked the system or something. People like him don't drive cars like that. Officer 2. Turning slowly to Karen, voice calm but firm, ma'am, what exactly do you mean by people like him? Karen. Momentarily faltering, then regaining composure, young people. 21-year-olds don't have Rolls-Royces unless something illegal is going on. I'm just trying to protect our neighborhood's property values and safety. A neighbor, an older gentleman with silver hair and a kindly expression, approaches from across the street. Neighbor. Officers, I hate to interrupt, but I think you should see something. He holds up his phone. My doorbell camera captured this entire interaction. I was watching the live stream from my office when I heard the commotion. Karen. Her face shifts from confident indignation to uncertainty. Neighbor. I'd be happy to email you the footage, including the parts where Mrs. Wellington used some rather unfortunate language before you arrived. Officer 1. Curious, what language would that be, sir? Neighbor. Glancing uncomfortably at Jason, well, she said, and I quote, we don't need his kind bringing down our property values, and that she would make sure he's removed from this neighborhood one way or another. There was other terminology I'd rather not repeat in public. Karen. Face draining of color, that's completely taken out of context. I was merely expressing concern about maintaining our community standards. Officer 2. Turning back to Jason, sir, your documentation appears to be in order. I apologize for the inconvenience and misunderstanding. Jason. Thank you, officers. I appreciate you taking the time to clear this up. Officer 1. If anything else comes up, don't hesitate to call. And ma'am, please remember to let the police handle these matters without assumptions or accusations. Karen. Quietly, as she steps back, yes, officer. The officer handed back my license and registration with a brief nod. You're free to continue moving into your new home, he said, his tone businesslike but polite. Then, without much ceremony, he turned to Karen. The shift in his demeanor was immediate, what had been neutral now carried a sharp edge. Mrs. Wellington, he addressed her formally, may I speak with you privately for a moment? Karen's face tightened, and she exchanged a quick glance with me before stepping away with the older officer. From a distance, I could see her animated gestures growing increasingly frantic, her hands slicing through the air as if trying to fend off an invisible threat. The younger officer stayed close by, offering quiet apologies. Sorry for the disruption to your move-in day, he said with a sympathetic smile. No problem at all, officer, I replied, trying to reassure him. I understand you were just responding to a call. Meanwhile, more neighbors had begun to gather along the street. I noticed their gazes, not on me, but fixed disapprovingly on Karen. The tide had shifted dramatically in those few moments, the community that once stood behind her now seemed to silently question her actions. After several minutes of conversation between Karen and the officer, the older man pulled out a notepad and began scribbling notes. Suddenly, Karen's voice erupted, rising several octaves in pitch. "You cannot be serious," she exclaimed, her usual calm replaced by desperation. "I was performing my civic duty. I'm the president of the HOA." The scene froze for a heartbeat, neighbors holding their breath as the officer's expression remained unchanging. Then, with calm authority, he recited the Miranda rights. Karen stood motionless, the shock etched deeply across her face. "Karen Wellington, you're being placed under arrest for filing a false police report and for verbal harassment with discriminatory intent. Both are misdemeanors in this state. This is outrageous." Karen shrieked, her voice cracking as the officer gently but firmly guided her toward the patrol car. "I was protecting our community. This is reverse discrimination. I'll have your badge for this." Her protestations grew louder and more frantic as reality sank in. "I didn't mean anything by it. I was just being cautious." "You can't arrest someone for being careful." The neighbors watched in stunned silence, the street eerily quiet except for Karen's increasingly desperate cries. For years, she had terrorized the community with petty rule enforcement and thinly veiled threats, wielding her authority like a weapon. And now, she was being led away in handcuffs. As the officer opened the door of the cruiser, Karen's final words floated back to us: "This is a misunderstanding. Call my attorney." The following week, an official letter arrived from the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. Karen had been immediately suspended from her position pending a formal vote. The emergency meeting was swift and decisive. Her removal from the board was unanimous, 27-0. The consequences didn't end there. She faced a $5,000 fine for the false police report and was assigned mandatory community service hours. Rumors spread through the neighborhood that her real estate firm had placed her on administrative leave after multiple clients refused to work with her. The next time I saw Karen was at the local grocery store. The once imperious woman now seemed diminished, avoiding eye contact and blushing deeply when she spotted me. She abruptly abandoned her shopping cart and hurried toward the exit, her posture shrinking with embarrassment. The reign of the neighborhood tyrant had ended. The simple, firm consequences of her own actions shattered the facade of power she had clung to for so long. And as she fled the store, the visible shock on her face told me everything. She still couldn't believe how completely her authority had crumbled.